Welcome to the SpartanMag.com VCast. Jim Comparoni, Paul Konyndyk, Breslin Center. Michigan State defeats Oakland 79-62 tonight. Michigan State above 500, 6-5. One-day prep after the big win in Detroit against Baylor. Thanks for being there. You and Jake Laskawa covering that. I had to miss that game for family obligations. Got a lot to talk about, Paul. A lot going on with Michigan State sports. And there's no bowl game. I've never seen a December without a bowl game and so many things going on. Maybe we'll talk a little bit of football. We'll plan to, but the basketball team, big win against Baylor. We haven't talked about that since then. And they came out here against a tricky game, a tricky opponent with Oakland. The way they play that defense with that zone, which is a little bit of an amoeba defense, a little bit of a matchup zone, a little bit of everything. Tyson Walker said in the locker room after the game, it's tricky, it's difficult, and he was the marked man. Michigan State waded through it, built a lead 20-some plus, ended up winning by 17 or so, passed a nice one-day prep against the team that could end up in the NCAA tournament in March.
Yeah, we say that a lot about Oakland. You know, we say that they could end up in the NCAA tournament because they play Michigan State well. But I think the difference between this Oakland team and maybe some of the past other ones is they're not just playing Michigan State well, they're playing everybody well. The one thing that I've noticed this year with Oakland is they've got, obviously because of the COVID stuff, you know, you got Rocket Watts, he's got to be getting close to 23, 24 maybe. I mean, how old he is. You got a lot of other guys that are veterans, but they have everything that Oakland usually has in terms of shooting. But then you add the defensive component maybe, and they've got some upside because there's some guys that are playing a little bit now that are going to be playing more later. So they've got the shooting, they got some scorers. Their big guy is tricky, as they often are. But you know, and then the other thing too is that they play better defense, but they also, if you go big like Michigan State does, your big man, like your 5-man, is going to have to go out on the perimeter a lot and cover a guy that's probably going to be able to let it go and shoot at a pretty high clip. So, tough Oakland game. I think if you look at this 2-game stretch, Baylor and then Oakland, the thing that stands out to me is Michigan State played disciplined defense for 2 games in a row, and prior to that, I didn't see discipline on defense. Michigan State discipline on defense. So I think that's the big takeaway. And the discipline on defense and the solid position defense is leading to transition scoring opportunities. If guys are in position, you're seeing more transition scoring opportunities instead of over-rotating and that type of thing. And it's just a better overall operation. And the time that Michigan State spent in practice against Baylor, rebounding, just playing fundamental defense, it's carried over. All
about the defense. And I mentioned this at the Underground Bunker message board of the Final Forum at SpartanMag.com. Hey, give us a like on the channel right here in the YouTube channel. Also go to SpartanMag.com, become a subscriber. $1 for the month. All the coverage heading into signing day on Wednesday. Come become a subscriber over at SpartanMag.com. Become a magger. You'll love it. Something I posted over at the Final Forum message board, and I mentioned to you, I think, after the game. It started with defense, like you said. It was a different kind of defense. Michigan State, they lost to James Madison, lost to Nebraska with denial of passing lanes, getting out from the rim and getting beat back door. Wisconsin with the pinch post, split action, all those things. That's not Michigan State defense. Michigan State defense is pack line defense. Izzo doesn't call it pack line, but it essentially is. Izzo calls it, nail, elbow, block defense. And Michigan State, rather than being in the passing lanes and trying to deny and get out on people, was back, ironically, against the Baylor team that's lethal from three-point range. Took away the drive, reacted out. They were into the scouting report. Great communication with the guards on weak side. And Matty Sissoko on some screens and helping recover. Cooper coming in, screens, help recover. And it was just solvent in their pack line, reacting out, rebound and go. It was Michigan State's base defense, which they haven't played a lot this year. They've played a different style a lot. And tonight they got out a little bit more and less pack line. But it was nice if you're a Michigan State fan to see Michigan State go back to Michigan State defense and harness that level of defense, which was borderline Final Four defense, getting that going in December, which is nice, which you should be able to do with as many veterans as Michigan State has, but sometimes it takes the veterans a while to get their heads on straight too. And then you had Cohen Carr playing some weak side defense against Baylor, and it started with the defense, then came the rebounding in the transition game, and then Tyson Walker got hot against Baylor, and they get the blowout. But the defense is what travels. Getting that locked in, so much better than it was just a couple of weeks ago, and that's what gives the team a chance to do a lot of damage going forward.
And Tom Izzo said earlier this year, like when they did, in some of those exhibition games when they're trying to do some more denial stuff. Tom Izzo just mentioned that they're more susceptible to the drive, more susceptible to the back door, and he did indicate early on that we need to get back to what we do on defense. But I don't think they really got back to that until the last two games. There was a couple times in this game where maybe some guys got a little bit loose. Jaden Akins was over rotating a couple times, and Tom Izzo just lit into him, and he snapped. To his credit, he snapped back into what he's supposed to be doing, and I think his defense in the last two games is much improved.
Yeah. He played good defense against that Walter kid. That Walter kid's
Right.
going to be an NBA first-round draft choice in a few months.
And I said something to him afterwards, and he kind of smirked at me and it was like a sarcastic smirk. But I said, man, I'm like, your defense is always good, but the last two games you've played with an edge that it's been really good. And he kind of gave me this kind of smirk, and I asked him, is that because you're playing? Is that because you're hitting more shots? And he didn't want to admit it. No one wants to admit that. But he is playing with a different type of edge. He's playing with the type of defense that he wanted to coming into the year when he told me at media day that he wanted to be an all-defensive team player. You're seeing Hogard play better defense. You're seeing Tyson Walker get back to playing good defense. I think Trey Holloman, he's starting to learn how to use his length as a defender, and he's understanding that that's an asset. He can recover with that kind of length. He doesn't have to foul all the time. Jeremy Fears, I think, is coming in and playing pretty good defense. And I think that the defense that they're playing, not the denial, but the pack line, suits Jeremy Fears better. I think if you put him in that scenario and give him a set of principles to work with, he's much better than if he's playing frenetic and out of control at times.
And you're not seeing those guards rushing out to try to block shots and jumping out of a play,
Right.
shot fake, open. They're like coming out under control, which is the Michigan State way.
Right.
Sometimes guys will get hot and shoot over that well, but they tested Baylor and asked, go ahead and shoot over the top, and they shot some air balls. And Akins and Holloman coming off the bench, doing it under control, and it was top to bottom just excellent. The communication, and also against Baylor, some pride. Hogard, Walker, tired of losing, wanting to show, we can play defense like we need to. It seemed like there was a pride factor, just an urgency, a collective one-brain urgency for them, and it's carried over. That was great to see.
Yeah, I think that's 4 straight days of practice of nothing but being harped on, but defense and rebounding. And you saw it in the crispness of the two-handed rebounds against Baylor. You saw it with big guys tonight, with a couple exceptions. And Oakland's a tricky team to rebound against at times. But Carson Cooper, Monty Sissoko came out and he got 6 quick rebounds. And if the ball was in his area, he didn't care if a teammate was there. He was going to get the ball, and that was good to see. I talked to him afterwards the Baylor game, and he was talking about taking it really personal. That's what I'm here to do. That's what I need to do. That's defend and rebound, and Carson Cooper as well. I think both of those guys, two-handed rebounds, that's a key. We'll see if that continues, but I think it really has to, because you don't beat. You're talking about the Oakland zone. I've never seen a time where Michigan State's played Oakland and had a double-digit win against them when they didn't get transition baskets and get good scoring opportunities before that zone could set up. And tonight, Oakland is really good on defense until probably maybe the 2-minute mark, with 2 minutes left in that first half. And Michigan State got, I think it was a 9-3 run, but it was all defensive created run-out opportunities, and they went from being, I think they were up 2 with 4:30 left, and they ended up, up 8 at halftime or something like that, and it was all transition related. And in the second half, they continued to do that and got out and ran. And I think that was a real Campy was surly about it. He was upset about it. But Michigan State played good defense, and they were able to run off of it. They didn't rebound as well in the second half, and that led to a few Oakland scoring opportunities. But their first tier of defense throughout the night was outstanding.
And I like Michigan State support players, if you want to call Akins one of them, but Holloman, Fears, Akins. In losses, a lot of times those guys over their skis a little bit, trying to do a little bit too much, maybe over-dribbling here, taking a sloppy shot there, or throwing it away here or there, trying to do too much. As Izzo would say, guys trying to hit triples and home runs instead of just hitting singles. It seems like Holloman and Fears, and to an extent Akins, hitting more singles now. Like Akins would over-dribble, get himself in trouble in some of those losses. They've scaled it back, and all three of those guys have scaled it back, and it's made the team better. It's getting, little by little, the team's coming around. And it's just December, but make no mistake about it, this team was in crisis mode a little bit. If they would have lost to Baylor, the ability to get good wins in the non-conference would have been over for the season. Then you're at the mercy of how good is the Big Ten in terms of computer rankings and all those things. You're 0-2 in the Big Ten already, and you start getting to a negative math game, which could get tricky. That game meant so much, not only winning that game. And I don't remember a December game. We've covered December games in the past when Michigan State's had an opportunity to win big games. This was like a situation where they had a lot to lose in a December game, more than I remember them ever having more to lose in a December game that I can think of. Maybe going back to the early Izzo's first two seasons of his career, way back then when you needed those December wins against Nebraska and people like that when they were not in the Big Ten. They had a lot to lose against Baylor.
They haven't really had a lot of – this is typically the time where Izzo doesn't schedule a lot of tough games. So this is usually the time to get right before the Big Ten season. Obviously, this was different because you got two Big Ten games, which you've had for a few years, several years. But them playing Baylor at that time, it's rare. I'm trying to think of the last time Michigan State played a non-conference opponent. I think they have played maybe in Detroit a couple times.
In mid to late December?
Maybe.
It's usually the weekend of graduation.
Right.
That's when Breslin is not open because of graduation. That's when they usually go on the road or maybe play a road neutral or, those games against Texas at the Palace.
But the thing about this that was tough is not just the fact that you played Baylor. It's the fact that you played Baylor and then you play 2 days later you play Oakland coming off of finals. The other thing, too, is that Michigan State's got 4 freshmen, 3 that play that have never played Oakland before. So to do that in a one-day prep and give those guys, roles is impressive. I thought, especially when you look at a guy like Cohen Carr, he's playing the most minutes of those young guys, rightfully so. But you have him come in and he's playing the 4, and he's playing against a team where really with that zone, the guy that you want to run offense through is the 4, and you can't really do that as much with him because you're not going to get the ball to the elbow with him like you could with Malik Hall, where Hall's kind of getting an opportunity to shoot or pass the ball out of there. Cohen Carr's not a great passer; he's a great leaper. He did a lot of nice things today, even. But it's a whole different animal with Malik Hall playing the 4 against the zone, and then Cohen Carr playing the 4 against the zone.
Exactly right. Michigan State was flashing guards to the free throw line a lot more in the zone offense today, probably because of what you talked about, to make it a little bit less power forward, conduit, portal, that used to be the portal of the zone offense was the free throw line power forward. And it was with Hall for sure, but that's a great point. I didn't think about that, about Carr not being Kenny Goins flash into the middle of the zone like that.
It changed, too. It changed because when he was in there, all of a sudden it went from being a 4-man that can get a shot at the elbow like Malik Hall to, okay, I'm going to get the ball, but then I'm going to try to pass it out to the perimeter for a jump shot. And some of those went down, I think. Some of them didn't, but Oakland would much rather have the ball going from Cohen Carr out to the perimeter to maybe a Trey Holloman or Jeremy Fears than the ball going out to like a Jaden Akins. But I thought it was interesting that Greg Campy said afterwards that, hey, we're going to do. Everybody else on this team was going to beat us except for Tyson Walker. That's how much respect they have for him. And
that was his plan.
And you could see like, and it was working for a long time. You could see them backing off Malik Hall at the 3-point line. Okay, we're gonna occupy the elbow area, but we're going to give you the 3-point line. You could see them giving Hogard, the 3-point line. You could see them giving Holloman's even the 3-point line, and it was a good giving Akins the corner. Because I really believe, and I think it changed a little bit today, but Akins is shooting the ball out of the corner at a different trajectory than if he was shooting from the wing. I think he's figured some things out, but I think on film, if I was watching film and I was Greg Campy, I'm like, he's just not shooting it right from the corner. And but I think Michigan State, they did a lot of really good things today. Stacking 2 games together, it's not a fluke. I think that's the thing that they can take away from it. We beat 2 different teams, 2 different styles. And both of these teams had significant time to prepare for us. We took it to them, and that's the key for Michigan State. It's more about them during the holidays than their opponent. And Michigan State's in a much better place now than they were when they were in panic mode after the Nebraska game.
It's all about them, but also they really needed these wins.
Absolutely,
they needed these wins, and these 2 games back to back were a terrific test for Michigan State. Baylor, for obvious reasons. The one-day prep, they won't have a one-day prep for a game the rest of the year. And they haven't had any, I don't think, this year. You might play back-to-back days at a preseason tournament or something, but the old-fashioned one-day prep, NCAA tournament style, you don't replicate that any other time of the season. Not in the Big Ten tournament because you're playing every day back-to-back-to-back. for them to get a huge win over Baylor and get right back to work replicates the NCAA tournament. And sometimes the NCAA tournament, in the second round, you'll play in Oakland, who upset somebody in the first round. You know,
Right.
just a wacky, like Izzo said, wishbone style of play, and getting those guys back to work. It was a great rehearsal. I know it's December and March is a long way away, but Michigan State had a great test here in these last 3 days and really passed that test. And they got to feel good about it, and they are better than a 6-5 team right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at how it transpired. Baylor, great defense, but Tyson Walker was hot from the beginning. This game, Tyson Walker got hot in the second half, but they found ways to other scorers contributed. Everybody contributed. You look at that stat line from the first half, and it was 5 points here, 5 points here, 5 points here from different guys. Tyson Walker got going in the second half and hit some big shots, but for them to win this way with a whole bunch of different guys contributing as scorers in the first half, waiting until Tyson Walker got opportunities to get hot, that's a whole lot different than when he goes off for 18 or 16 or 18 points in the first half against Baylor. They proved to themselves that it's not just the Tyson Walker show today, that other guys can contribute in different ways as long as the defense is a constant. And rebounding can be better. I think it will be better. But against Baylor, that rebounding was really, really good. And guards did a really nice job. I think Jaden Akins is doing a much better job pursuing rebounds in addition to playing great defense. And he's getting a little bit of an edge to him, so that's a good thing moving forward.
And add A.J. Hogard to the list of people that are playing within themselves and not getting over their skis as well. Now, Malik Hall, was 1 of 7 from the floor today, but playing really good defense. Played good defense against Townsend today. Played really good defense against Bridges on Saturday. That was an excellent matchup. So Michigan State, with Hall, is getting consistent. You can lean on him as a veteran with some physical ability, some athleticism, to go against a stretch mismatch 4 and be a better defender than those 4s are accustomed to seeing. So that's good. Now Malik Hall, can he do the rest of it and become a range shooter? He's under 20% for the year. Turned down a 3 today to get a good assist into the corner.
Done a few of them when he's left open.
Yeah, so I don't think they should quit on that. They need him to keep working on that 3-point shot. And I've seen him after practice working on it. And maybe against Stony Brook, give him some green light to make him feel better and get into a groove a little bit, because at some point, against some of the better defenses and some of the talented teams, Michigan State's going to need that stretch 4, as we've said all offseason and all in September and October. That was going to be an element that was very important this season, and it's been missing, having that stretch 4 from Hall, so that still needs to come around.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I think the big thing for everybody is finding ways to contribute when you're not scoring. I think that's what good teams do. And Malik Hall is doing a lot of good things right now, but that jump shot, yeah, I think he needs to do what Jaden Akins has been doing. I talked to Jaden Akins tonight, and he's like, after every practice, making 300, 400 threes. I think that's a lot, but that's such an essential part of what Michigan State does against a really elite defensive type team. Now they've got some guards and whatnot that can create. But against some teams, you're going to have that stretch. Even against a team like Purdue. I just think some of these Big Ten teams that are good defensive teams that know what you do as a Michigan State basketball team, you're going to have the face-up jumper. I would like to have seen him take more. Yeah. I know why he didn't, because he's trying to execute, trying to run an offense through him. But in the next game like Stony Brook, I want to see a game. I want to see a couple games where he takes 5 or 6 threes.
I agree.
Instead of, I want to see where he turns down an opportunity to dribble into traffic against an overmatched opponent. That's turning down a good scoring opportunity, but he needs to get the confidence going. He needs to get his jump shot going, and feel good about that.
Sure, and today Oakland doesn't have a lot of size in there, but it was nice to see Madison Sissoko get the ball inside and execute a post move. I've seen him do it in practice.
And Carson Cooper. In the first half, Oakland was not doubling the post. Both of those guys, when they got the ball inside and they weren't doubled, they went after it and they scored post moves, and that was good to see. And it's good for Michigan State as a team, the psyche of the team, to see that, because there's lots of times where it's not. People say, well, they don't score inside. Well, to score inside, you have to run plays and you have to get the ball inside. So it's not just on a kid whether he can do it or not. But the floor has to be spread out enough where he can get the ball. And when Jaden Akins is hitting shots, and you've got guards that are able to penetrate and do some different things, then those guys are going to have more room to operate.
Yeah, and Sissoko, when he got it down low against I don't know, Wisconsin and some teams, it looked, the rhythm was not there, and a lot of fans are like, they think it's a lost cause. No, he's gotten better in the post. There's something there. They need to keep working on it, because if it gains traction, they can get a lot of positives from it. And it's not consistent, but it just needs work, and they need to invest some touches down there.
It's a swagger confidence thing, to be honest with you, with some of those guys. And in games like this, the last 2 games for Monty, there's a difference about it. He believes in himself again, and I think you'll see it moving forward.
Yeah, and I go all the way back to 1998 with DeJuan Wiley. He looked kind of lost for a while, but then gained traction his senior year at Michigan State, 2-year player, junior college guy, and became not a guy that you're going to ride or go to, but a guy that if you got it down low to him, hit some turnaround jumpers. I'm not saying Sissoko's ready for turnaround jumpers, but he's working on some hooks and stuff. You saw Cooper with a drop step against a double team once, got fouled at the rim. It's not something you give up on. You keep feeding it and you keep repping it, and you hope that all those things come together into February, and you don't quit on those things. Kohler's going to be back soon. Izzo, he was in a boot today.
He was in a boot against Baylor too.
And Izzo said that there was some soreness that had crept back up, and they took a look at it, and the tests, I guess, were good. They came back favorable, so it might. Izzo said, "I hope it doesn't impact the timeline," but it already has. Izzo said they're going to wait and just shut him down until after Christmas. There was some hope that he would come back before Christmas, but Izzo feels he's too important for the future. Those were Izzo's words in the post game today. So they're shutting it down for another week and not taxing it anymore right now. So that's where Kohler is, and Kohler's got all kinds of skill. And you watch him in practice, in the weight room. I mean, he's gotten bigger. He's changed his body shape a little bit. But his weakness last year, in addition to strength, was lateral quickness on defense, playing defense zone, ball screen defense, the lateral movement needed there, and he was improving on that, worked on that all summer, but now he hurts his wheel. I don't know what it's going to look like when he comes back. Yeah, he's got skill on offense and everything, but if he can't move laterally on defensive ball screen defense, he might not be able to help as immediately as a lot of people assume, and like Izzo's talking about. That's just my thought. I think down the road he's going to be an excellent player, but it's a lot to expect him to come back and hit the ground running.
Yeah, especially when how Izzo against a team like Nebraska wants to go small. You only have a limited number of touches for bigs, and I think with Sissoko and Cooper playing better, there's less of a sense of urgency for him to get Kohler back. It's going to be a work in progress. It's going to take a little bit of time. I think Kohler, he still looks like he's in great physical shape. It's not like he's lost some of the benefit of the weight room. But yeah, it's going to take a while for him to move again in practice. But I guess the luxury right now with Michigan State's bigs playing better, they don't have to force that issue.
He's been hitting that weight room since he's been out. Yeah. So he's gotten bigger, so that's good. So it is basketball season. Michigan State still has a basketball team, contrary to opinions 6 days ago that the season was. I mean, there was a poll on our message board. More than half of our subscribers thought they would not make the NCAA tournament this year.
Right.
How many Bruce Lee movies do you have to see, Paul, to realize that Bruce Lee's going to be fine in the end?
Yeah. Well, he wasn't fine.
Now, there's no guarantee.
He wasn't fine in the end.
That's a good point. Maybe a bad example.
Sorry.
But too soon? It's been 45 years.
You know how much
too soon.
I don't know. I'm not going to muse on what happened to him. I'm a huge Kung Fu movie fan. So.
And basketball there's no script out here, so there's no guarantee that Michigan State's always going to be great. But for people to close the door, December 15th on Michigan State. Okay, so anyway, so it's a real basketball season again, and it'll be fun to cover it going forward. Football, Paul, every day there's roster additions, roster movement, transfer commitments. We've got signing day coming up on Wednesday, National Signing Day, covered to SpartanMag.com. Become a subscriber, $1. You'll love it. What do we have here? 13 commitments overall, and it's 6 commitments in the last 9 days. High school kids.
I think you need to preface that because it's 13 commitments, but you got does that include the transfer numbers?
No.
So I would say 17 commitments, and then I divided into 13 high school players and 4 transfers because I think now transfers should be considered commitments.
So 6 commitments from high school players in the last 9 days. 3 commitments from transfers in the last 24 hours as we record this. Big one, Jack Velling, the tight end. Reminds me of Josiah Price.
He blocks better than Josiah Price.
6'5", 225, set an Oregon State single-season touchdowns record this year. Seattle kid, visited Washington. He's coming to East Lansing. Good win for Michigan State.
I think the thing when you look at that offense, the Jonathan Smith offense, it's a tight end favorable offense. And I know Washington did some good things with their tight end, but this offense is built for tight ends. It's built in a pro style thing, and they've got a reputation for putting in guys that they've had two guys drafted. One of those guys was just a blocker type, and then the other one, Musgrave, who's hurt this year with the Packers. He started out really well, but they've got that reputation, like in Iowa State, like in Iowa, of teams that produce, like in Wisconsin, teams that produce tight ends. And for them to go out of that, for him to leave that type of tight end friendly system, go to Washington, where I think you could say some of it might be more system related or because of the wide receivers. It's a good fit for what he does for in terms of being a tight end, but a mismatch guy in the red zone. But I go back to this. I like the fact that he blocks as well as catches. That's something that Michigan State has lacked for so many years. A guy that can be a threat, a mismatch threat, but isn't a liability in the blocking game. And I just like the way the tight ends in the run game and the operation where that works together. I mean, I can't remember the last time that I covered a Michigan State team where I wasn't concerned about the run game operation with some janky tight end blocking to go along with the O-line. I know that these guys are going to get it done. I like the guys that they have. I like the high school kid that committed the other day. Hook. I think he's going to be really good. I think he's a guy that they really liked. I think they're going to do a nice job with the young tight ends in the program. And I think you're going to see some real Big Ten tight end play, and you're going to see mismatch at that tight end position.
And just some simple creativity to get those tight ends on some drags, some counter boots, and just some basic pro-style football.
I wouldn't say creativity. I just say execution of basic plays. It's not creativity. It's doing your job and doing it the right way and running it the right depth and running a route the way you're supposed to run it every single time, not just when you think the ball might be coming to you. And I'm not criticizing anyone in particular. But Michigan State hasn't had really good, sound tight end play since the high point of the D'Antonio era.
I've seen some creativity from Oregon State, though. They'll do your basic, two tight end, hard zone, and then boot off of that and drags and stuff. They did one where I think it was Velling, where the tight end you would think would be, dragging, but instead it was like a slide and changed direction and came back this way for a throwback. So it looks simple, under center, two tight ends, looks like, old school, current pro style football, but little wrinkles here and there when they get you leaning. So there's some creativity sewn in there. And you have Wyatt Hook coming in, and also, Jake Velling and Brendan Parachek's going to be a guy that this coaching staff, I think, is going to like moving forward. So the tight end position, it's an overhaul.
I'd say watch out for guys like Masunas and Jack Nickel. Those guys, I mean, shoot. They never – I don't want to be critical of anybody that was on the coaching staff, but the guy that they brought in as a tight ends coach hadn't coached tight ends. He was a wide receiver coach coming in. I do think that – I do think there's some more credibility. I think this is going to be a tight end friendly type situation. I think those guys are probably pretty excited about what's going on.
I know there's some young offensive linemen that are excited about what's taking place there. So, and this is something I'll be talking about all week. Michigan State had 3.5 weeks to put this class together, hire a football coach, and I mean, it's crisis time right now. And you had a lot of players going into the portal, not knowing what's going on with NIL, and that's still getting solved. And some progress in that direction. But what they did was a pragmatic approach. They said, okay, and I talked to Jason Killip about this a couple of weeks before Jonathan Smith was hired. I said, look at Oregon State's commitments and look at the ones that are not from the state of Oregon. If Jonathan Smith becomes the head coach, those are the guys that I suspect would be flippable to Michigan State. Guys from Ohio, a guy from Hawaii, guy from Idaho, a couple from Texas, one from Florida, and that's who they went after. They went after their commitments at Oregon State that weren't from Oregon, and they've gotten every single one of them. Well, they're still working on they're still working on Kikai Burnett from Honolulu, defensive end. Good shot with him. Rakeem Johnson, offensive lineman from Ohio, still working on him, but things are looking favorable. There's the one guy from Massachusetts they didn't go after. But anyway, they got their guys from Oregon State, and then they were able to keep the ones that Harlan Barnett had kept in the hopper. Then they went into the Midwest and said, okay, who's flippable? Who's some low-hanging fruit around here? Got involved with Brady Pretzlaff and Gaylord. Got a good shot to get him. They get the quarterback from Alessio Milivojevic from Wheaton, Illinois. St. Francis Academy, flip him from Ball State, a quarterback that they evaluate, they like him, flippable, they get him. Still going after Tyler Cherry, which would be a big one out of Center Grove. I think that guy's excellent. Just at the quarterback position, you get Aiden Childs, you get a Mac flip, and then you get a Midwestern guy that got knocked loose because he was committed to Duke. Duke gets a coaching change. Guys from Indiana go after him. If they get those three, like I wrote today, that's like a 3-run homer. If you get those, that's better than I would have thought just at the quarterback position. But it made sense, Paul. Get your Oregon State guys, keep the guys that Barnett kept warm, and then get in the Midwest, and they're putting together, they're salvaging a solid recruiting class, right, and then some.
And then you've got the running backs from Texas who, Keith, I don't even know how to pronounce it.
Frazier and then Tullis.
Yeah, Tullis, but KB, the running backs coach, he is an excellent recruiter. He's got a huge reputation in Texas. I talked to, when I talked to Frazier's coach about that, they love KB down in Texas, and they believe in him, and they believe he's one of the best out there. He's had a really good run with running backs, even going back to Boise State from the state of Texas. And Damian Martinez is another guy from Texas, from outside that Dallas area. So I think Michigan State's going to be have a lot more credibility in certain areas. One of the things I've noticed in talking to some high school coaches, the relationship-based recruiting,
Yes.
It's a huge deal. It was terrible. It was absolutely piss poor under Mel Tucker. They went over coaches in many instances, went around backs. They had the position coaches were not involved in obviously geographical areas, but the relationships that are developed when you're not involved in geographical areas, it just doesn't happen. And recruiting is such a relationship-based type of deal. Every high school coach I've talked to, and I've talked to several of them, with some of these commitment features, they rave about guys like I was talking to the Gaylord head coach, and he was raving about Joe Rossi being, going out of the way to recruit Brady Pretzlaff, going to Gaylord High School. If you're going to Gaylord, you're not going anywhere else, but you're going to see one guy saying that Joe Rossi had been in there like seven times in person
when he was recruiting
in Minnesota. And then the other thing is when he wasn't, before he was hired at Michigan State, it wasn't like he was trying to, he was trying to do anything untoward and trying to flip, Brady Pretzlaff to Michigan State before he became a Michigan State coach. He wasn't even there for the official visit, or didn't talk to him then. But the relationship-based stuff that I've heard about him, Keith, I think it's Bonafa, other guys, the relationship with the high school coaches, and it's a big deal. I think that people, not recruiting off a list, trusting your own eval. We've seen instances with some of the running backs of them going with guys that they believe in, as opposed to guys that are ranked higher, and it's refreshing to see. And it's nothing that shouldn't be happening. Okay, this is all. And I said this to you the other day when we were on the phone briefly. I was like, it's really good to see this happening. That's stuff that should have been happening every day of the year for the past 4 years. It wasn't. And you can talk about recruiting. Yeah. But if assistant coaches aren't involved in the relationship base of it, and you're putting all that on people that are professional recruiting coaches or whatever, that's the stuff that the University of Michigan used to do when Mark D'Antoni was building his program. And it's the reason why Mark D'Antoni was able to get so many in-state recruits, because Michigan wasn't recruiting in-state guys with real coaches. They're just kind of resting on their laurels, resting on whatever benefit they had. This staff knows how to work. They know how to grind. They know how to evaluate. Big deal, you say, but it's something that's been missing for the last 4 years at Michigan State, and it's really good to see that returning. Mm-hmm. And also understanding that character is part of the recruiting process. Like the Hayden Fry thing, that you want to recruit kids with extra heartbeat, kids with a high care factor, because that adds up to wins when you recruit enough good people.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see what's going to happen once they've been entrenched for 12 months, 24 months, as they get to know those coaches more and more. Wozniak has a lot of connections in Ohio. I heard a Michigan State assistant coach set foot in a high school in the Cleveland area, and it was a Michigan State coach who hadn't recruited Cleveland in the past, and the high school coach from Cleveland, it might have been St. Ignatius High School, said to the Michigan State assistant, "Where have you guys been for 4 years, 5 years?" You know what I mean? And talking to Eric Moore at Center Grove High School, raving about Lindgren, talking to Bob McMillan at St. Francis High School in Wheaton, Illinois, raving about Lindgren, saying he hadn't had a Michigan State coach at his high school in 5 years. And, even the 7-on-7 circuit, I mean, that's part of recruiting too. And talked to Reggie Wynn today from Rising Stars. He was on campus for Jordan Turner's visit. He's still heavily involved with Jordan Turner, the linebacker from Wisconsin who committed to Michigan State to transfer today from Farmington. And Reggie Wynn loved his time with Rossi and Jonathan Smith. And it reminds me, I've been doing this a long time, and I remember when Saban was in his first year and those guys hit the road, and you heard all these great things about Mark D'Antonio and Jim Bowman when they were young recruiters. And, we at Spartan Magazine, we would talk to high school coaches, and it reminds me of that. It reminds me when D'Antonio first got started and Harlan Barnett and Dan Eno started recruiting in the Detroit area. It reminds me when Stan Joplin, Brian Gregory, and Izzo just got started in 1996, 97, 98, when they were out recruiting, and how much coaches and people liked them. Personable, young, aggressive, pragmatic, genuine, transparent. These are things I'm hearing from high school coaches and other people that are important in the recruiting trail. It reminds me of Saban, it reminds me of Izzo, it reminds me of D'Antonio.
Yeah, and I've heard Jonathan Smith has talked to several high school coaches in person on the phone and stuff like that, and he's got a ton of stuff going on, but it's not lip service. They understand how important it is to recruit your backyard, and those are the guys. Those are the guys that stay. Those are the guys that understand what it takes to win, and those are the guys that you need during periods of adversity. People that can lean on their families and can bring other people into that Spartan family. So I like most of what I'm seeing, and I think the eval has been really good. And it's not just highlight film eval, but I think the people are doing real homework on guys, and they're doing it fast and they're doing it efficiently. But it's not. I don't think you go back to that Mark D'Antonio's first class. He put that thing together hastily. There's like 7 NFL guys in that first class, and on signing day, whatever it ranked, like 45th or 60th or something like that. I mean, I remember doing that. I remember just talking to you and us doing some stories to follow up. There weren't a whole lot of reaches in that class, and I'm not seeing reaches right now. I'm seeing guys that are offered, maybe guys that are offered late, but they're well thought out offers, and they're not just throwing crap at the wall with portal guys. So I think a lot of people out there are like, yeah, last night I noticed on the message where people are like, where are these portal guys? Why aren't they bringing those guys in? I think they're being selective with it, as they should. They need to wean themselves off an over-dependence on transfer football players, but they can't do it immediately. They need to bring in good guys and good people that can fit this program, and I think they've done that. I like the guys that they brought in from Oregon State. Yeah.
And you talk about Aiden Childs, Jack Velling, Jordan Turner, linebacker. That's a program that needs linebackers. Comes in, he's got size. He's going to be playing some inside linebacker. TJ Sheffield, originally from Thompson Station, Tennessee, 5'11", 190 from Purdue. 32 catches this year. In 2022, had 46 catches. And in 2021, 36 catches. So a guy with over 100 receptions for his career. They need receivers. They go out and get Sheffield. That I didn't really see that one coming, Paul. These other ones are kind of, you can kind of see it coming. That one, I know he visited and everything, but that's one they kind of went off the radar I described a minute ago and went and got their own guy. They're not their own guy, but went and got somebody else's guy, made that one work.
That's a smart get. It's not like an Alante Brown, and I don't mean any disrespect to Alante Brown, who everyone's talking about has upside or hasn't, has been behind this guy, so he hadn't been able to do it. This is a guy that had as many stats as let's say Trey Mosley had, except he's a different type of player. He's that fast, in space kind of guy that the Oregon State receivers they've had a lot of success with those type of guys, and this guy's done it every single year in different styles of offense. I'm excited to see what he does, and they need receivers with as many guys leaving the program.
Yes, they do. And we'll wrap it up. Also, I'm hearing good things about Jacoby Windman with the intentions to come back. There's things going on there, and it looks like you had him in there with Turner, and you got Jordan Hall coming back, it looks like, and so that linebacker situation, which was in crisis. Well, that helps too. And Halliday, we'll wait and see what he's doing. I assume he's going to stick around. I don't know, but
I think with Halliday, if you haven't heard from him right now, that he's probably going to stick around. And I know people are down on Halliday, but he's the guy that would fit the Joe Rossi mold, high care factor.
And if he's a second stringer, that's great.
That's fine. If he's a first stringer, accept it. That's either way. But I watching a little bit of Minnesota, like what they do on defense. I really like their linebackers. How their linebackers play disciplined football. I like the way they move things around a little bit. I like some of their, like their 4-man rushes, and then you get a guy dropping to help out in coverage. I really like a lot of what they do schematically on defense, and that to me is a home run hire for Michigan State. I know like some people wanted like Phil Parker or whatever, but Joe Rossi is a dang good defensive coordinator, and I really enjoyed watching Minnesota defensive film. As soon as I heard that he was going to be the guy, I went out and watched a lot of it, and then. That's a guy that if I was a linebacker, I'd want to play for.
Yeah. And they struggled this year. They had that's the cyclical nature of college football. You're going to have ebbs and flows depending on your level of experience. And they got caught this year with a lot of inexperience at linebacker. But the year before and the previous years, sound on defense.
They did it in different ways. Like 1 year was a front 7 year. Like 2 years ago, front 7 year. Then they did it, had a lot of good players in the secondary. I think one of the reasons why Minnesota struggled a little bit more on defense this year is their offense wasn't near as good.
Yeah.
So
you might remember 2022 when Michigan State was getting ready to play Minnesota, and I wrote the pre-snap read. I've been watching Minnesota all week, and that was after the Michigan State game at Washington. I sat down in the press box, and I don't know if you remember what I said, but I said I would trade Michigan State's coaches for Minnesota's right now. Now I know P.J. Fleck has had his struggles. Do you remember when I said that before the game?
I remember you said that.
And then Minnesota went out and beat Michigan State 34-7. Half of that was based on Minnesota's defense and what I'd seen all week, and I described it in pre-snap read that week. They were like Iowa light, which I mean is a strong compliment.
Right.
That linebacker they had back then, number 55, Mariano, what's his name, was like a slightly watered down Max Bulla type of guy that was just correct. The safeties were big and correct, and that's all you could ask.
And that D line was like a D'Antonio era D line where you had like 3 or 4 guys that didn't get as much hype as they should. But guys that might make their way in the NFL, those type of guys. Guys
that just got the job done for what they had available to them, talent-wise. Right. Those defenses were outstanding. This year they took a step back, and but I know Rossi. We've not talked to him yet, but he's got to be fired up about the type of people he can recruit here and getting some traction going on defense. So a lot of football going on. Just getting started. It's going to take a lot of building blocks and a lot of time to get the roster where they want it to. But the first 3 weeks have been pretty impressive, I'd say, Paul. I mean, a lot of what they're doing just makes sense.
And I would say, too, the guys that are...
And it's easier said than done to be out here saying it makes sense. They're getting it done.
But the guys that return, the guys that stayed through all of it, there's going to be a high buy-in factor, and it's not going to be like just cliches. They're going to understand that this is real football. I think you're going to see a real high buy-in factor like we saw in the first year under Mark D'Antonio. I don't know what that'll mean wins or loss-wise, but I don't think that this thing was as far gone as it was when he took over at Oregon State, in 2018. In fact, I know it's not. And Michigan State has better resources, better personnel, and there's some good human beings and some good dudes in that football program coming back. And I'm really interested to see how this works, this builds. And I just really want to see fundamentally sound football, and I think we're going to see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It might not be always winning, but I want to see guys that play their tails off and aren't getting beat for silly reasons.
And build, and I think that's what we're going to see as observers of Michigan State football. So go to SpartanMag.com. Keep an eye on Tyler Cherry. That's going to be an interesting one. I give a slight edge to Indiana right now, but if they get him, he's an excellent 4-star quarterback, and he's underrated. He's like number 280 in the country. If you'd have told me, you look at his film, if you told me that he was a top 75 national guy committed to Texas, I'd believe it. When you watch him, he's excellent. I don't know if they're going to get him or not, but we're covering that over there at Spartan Mag. Burnett, the defensive lineman from Honolulu, Raheem Johnson, the offensive lineman, Brady Pretzlaff, and some others. We'll be covering it at SpartanMag.com. Anything else, Paul?
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see what happens with Pretzlaff. Him and Joe Rossi are really tight, so I would think that the chances are pretty good with that one.
All right. For Paul Konyndyk, my name is Jim Comparoni. You've been watching the VCast from the Breslin Center with the Spartans. The VCast, SpartanMag.com.